Hello everyone, welcome back to another Matthew the Young Aviator video. In today's video I will be teaching how to fly the Boeing 787-10 Dreamliner. So I'm going to be doing this via a regularly scheduled flight with United Airlines from Washington Dulles International Airport to San Francisco International Airport. Now this plane can carry about 330 people and is powered by powerful General Electric GenX engines, as you can see over here. So let's jump into the cockpit. Okay, so as you can see now over here we are in the cockpit of the aircraft. As you can see, everything is cold and dark, which means none of the systems of the aircraft are on. No electrical power flow to the aircraft. Imagine it as pretty much the plane is shut down. So we will start by doing our pre-flight flows, which are pretty much a fluid, action that pilots should know to start up their aircraft. So we will start by doing the flight deck safety inspection. We'll turn on the battery, and then we'll make sure that the hydraulic panel is set over here. So the C1, C2 pumps are set to auto, but the plane will automatically set them to off at this time. So now the wiper selector over here, it should be off. As you can see here, the left and right wipers are set to off. And now we turn on the nav lights to show that we have power to the aircraft. The Localizer will be as required. We use them mostly during night flights to show the logo of the aircraft, which is normally at the tail over here. So like this, they don't appear much in day, but turn them on at night and it will appear quite well. So landing gear lever over here, we will make sure it is set to down. As you can see, it is on the DN, which means down. And now we'll make sure that the parking brake is set. As you can see, it is pulled backwards, which means it is set. If we do this, it is not set. If we do that, it is set. So we will now establish external and APU power. Now we won't really actually need APU for now, but we will turn on the forward external power. APU is pretty much an engine at the back of the plane, which pretty much provides power to the aircraft and sometimes even air to the aircraft. It is most commonly found in commercial aircraft. So now we will make sure that the packs over here, they are on, they are automatic, so the plane will decide what is best to do. So we'll make sure that, so now we'll go to the fuel panel. It is over here. We'll make sure that the crossfeed switch is off. As you can see right now, it will be on. Pretty much it provides, for example, if one part of the aircraft has less fuel than the other area of the aircraft, if one wing of the aircraft has less fuel than the other wing of the aircraft, then it will pretty much make it even. So the fuel pump switches are off. As you can see, it says pressed, which means for pressure, which means they are off because there is no pressure in there. If we want to turn one on, as you can see, it says on and the press goes away. The pressure goes away. So now the balance switch should be off. And now we will set the anti-ice panel. It is over here. So we will set it all to auto, so the plane will decide if it is required. And now we will set the lighting panel. So over here we have the beacon lights. We'll make sure it is off. We already turned on nav lights. It would be as required, but right now it is on. Now here we have the logo light. Always set it as required, as we do not need it at this part of flight. And the wing light as required or off. We'll turn it off for now. Now we'll test the indicator lights. correction, we have already tested the indicator lights, but you would test them. You will make sure that the runway turn-off lights are off, and same for the taxi and strobe lights. So next thing on our checklist is going to be the air conditioning panel. Now here everything's set to auto, so the plane will decide everything. The cargo temperature over here is automatically set by the aircraft. So that should be it for the overhead display. So now we will set the altimeter, the glare shield over here. So the current altimeter, it is currently there we go. It is currently 30.34. So that was just too standard after we climb approximately 18,000 feet. So the navigation, the DND over here, we will set it to plan and push. So plan and push. Then we will enter in our flight plan. After this, the ND range selector, we won't need it very much, so let's do like this. So the weather switch is going to be off. The weather would be over here. Correction, the weather is over here, so we need to make sure it is off. And the traffic and terrain are going to be as required. Now the mode control panel over here, we're going to set the flight directors to on. As you can see how the flight directors are on. The auto throttle arm switches are going to be armed. So as you can see, they are armed like this. The autopilot disengage bar needs to be up like this would be down, and the autopilot wouldn't be on. So we need to set it like this to up. Now the bank limiter selector, we will set it to auto. So as you can see, now it is on auto. So, and the altitude increment we will set to automatic as well. And that is pretty much going to be it for that part. So we will start by, now we need to do a bit more actually. So we will make sure that the IRSs are turned on. The IRS over here. So, this one is having a bit of trouble. Over here, the IRS will set it to on. And we will make sure that over down here the flaps lever is up and the speed brake is like this. So now we may start the FMS. So we will start by going down to the ident, correction. So the ident page was over there. Let us go back, index, identification. We have currently the active nav data, the current air rack cycle, and the aircraft engine data, and the model is set to correct. It's correct, it's an 87-10. So we will start by going to the positional initialization the route page. We'll start by going to the route page. So we're going to start at KIAD over here, which is going to be our departure airport at Washington Dulles, and we will land at KSFO, which is San Francisco's ICAO code. And our flight number is going to be 424. So we are going to continue by going to the departure, and we will enter in our departure for today. Today we're going to depart via 01 right, via this departure, and we're going to use the auto transition. Okay, let's go back to route, activate, execute. And if we go to the next page of the route, isn't entering the auto transition, so there we go. Now it's entered in the auto transition. So if we go here, it will go to auto. Now we'll enter in the rest of our flight plan. We'll go directly to this waypoint, Charlie Oscar Lima November Sierra, direct. And now we'll use our first airway, which is pretty much a highway for planes. So a highway pretty much, it doesn't take you from one town to the next. It goes near a lot of towns, and then you can break away to smaller roads to go to other towns, which is pretty much how airways work. So Quebec 176 airway, and now we will go to Sierra Tango Lima, then direct to Mike Charlie India, MCI, and then direct to Golf Lima Delta. Go to the next page, then direct to Victor Oscar Alpha X-Ray Alpha, and now the Quebec 136 airway, to Rumps Romeo Uniform Mike Papa Sierra. Then we'll go directly to Oscar Alpha Lima, and then we'll go directly to Indian November Yankee Oscar Echo, and we will choose the top one because that's the one that we will need. And now for the arrival, we will be going ILS 528 right via the Diamond 5 arrival with the transition selected as Inyo. So now we will go to the next page. So over here we will see that there are no discontinuities. So as you can see, there is discontinuity. We will simply delete that. There we go. So there are no discontinuities. So we may now continue. So performance initialization, we will cruise at flight level 360, which is 36,000 feet. We will be using a cost index of 160, and we are going to have 2.4 metric tons in reserve. Now we'll go to the thrust limit. Correction, we will go to the takeoff page. So we are going to depart with flaps 5 for today, and our V speed, I already calculated them from before, 159er, 1 162 for for rotate, and 168 for V2. And the trimming, we will set it later. Correction, the trim, the plane will set it. So we can request to take off data if we want to, but we will not do it. So now we will continue, and that is actually going to be it. So we will simply complete the pre-flight. So the mode control panel over here, we're going to set LNAV and VNAV to arm. As you can see, they are armed over here. And we're going to set the heading to the runway heading. So the runway heading for runway 01 right is going to be 11 degrees. So it could be 10 degrees, for example, but runway headings are set to pretty much the heading of the runway. So if it is, for example, 14 degrees, it would still be runway 01, as there are 360 degrees and you round to the nearest 10. So we will set it to 11 degrees. There we go, 11 degrees. The speed, we will select it to the V2 speed. So we will go down to 168. And the altitude, we will set it. Our departure, we will first climb to 3000, and then so we will climb to 3000, and then we will climb over to 38,000 feet. So now that is pretty much going to be it. We'll wait for the IRS to align, as you can see over here. So see you in a minute once it aligns. It shouldn't take too long. Okay, so now we're going to do the pre-pushback checklist, before pushback checklist. So we'll start by setting our navigation display to map mode, and now we will start the APU. So we'll set it to start and then on, and once the APU starts, we'll turn the generators on. So we will go to systems and electrical to see when the APU starts. The APU generator is powering the main buses. If you go to status, the APU is still powering up, and now the electrical systems should be good. So we will turn off the external power. Okay, so we will check the status page over here. APU is on, oxygen, the pressure seems good, liquid cooling, the quantity is good, and the hydraulics, the quantity is good, the pressure is good. So now the seatbelt signs, we will set it to on for the passengers. Now we should put on our seatbelts. We have already gotten our seatbelts on, the captain and the first officer. And we have already turned the hydraulics, will turn on automatically once it is on. So now the fuel quantity, we will check the fuel quantity over here. it is good for our flight. And now we will turn on our fuel pumps. So the fuel pumps for the left, right, and center are going to be on. So we will turn on our beacon lights, and after this we will perform the before start checklist. Flight deck doors closed and locked. Passenger signs on. The mode control panel, V2 heading and altitude set. Takeoff speeds are set. The CG pre-flight is completed. The airplane is set to trim. Takeoff taxi and takeoff briefing is on, and beacon is on. So we may now do the start checklist. So we will start our pushback via turning off our parking brakes. So, correction, we will request pushback, and then at request we'll turn off the parking brakes.
This is ground, stand by.
Now, the pushback will commence. So, we will start the right engine first. So, we'll make sure that it is going to show the engine. So we're going to show the second engine indications over here. So now we're going to put this back here, the ECAS. So we will start the right engine first. So over here we have the engine starters.
Sir, the bypass pin is installed.
Okay.
All doors and hatches closed, and all ground equipment is removed.
The parking brakes are set. You may lift.
Parking brake set. Lifting the aircraft.
Okay, so we will start our second engine.
We are cleared for start and push.
Okay, cleared for push start. Please release parking brake.
And then we will run our second engine's fuel controls. We will release the parking brakes for pushback.
Parking brakes are released.
Commencing pushback. You can start the engines in sequence.
It will start in the sequence.
There we go. Now as you can see, we are pushing back. Our second engine is starting up. Okay, we will turn off our VNav, as after that we will use flight level change to climb. For now. We might use VNav later in the flight. So, okay, so our engine powered up accidentally. We must have hit the throttle indicators. We will set the left engine to start, and then we will run the fuel controls. So, that should be the pushback finished.
Okay, pushback completed. Please set your parking brake.
We will set the parking brake.
Parking brake set.
Parking brake set. Lowering aircraft.
Ground. Startup is complete. You may disconnect.
Roger. Good engine start. Cleared to disconnect. See you at the side. Have a good flight.
Okay,
Holding position waiting for the visual. Thank you and goodbye.
so the pushback is finished. So once our other engine starts up, we will make sure that the pushback tug is out of reach. As you can see, it is over there, so we will be able to taxi. Now our taxi route today is going to take us via Delta, then Kilo, and we will stop at Kilo 8 over here like this. So it's going to take us via Delta and Kilo, and then we will hold short at Kilo 8 over here. So that is going to be it. Now we will do the before taxi checklist. So the generators for the engines are on, as you can see, and the APU, we will now turn it off and turn off the generators. The engine anti-ice is as required. Now we will set the auto brake to RTO. And now we will check the flight controls. So go back to systems, flight controls. So full back, elevator is like this. Full down, elevator is doing well. So turn left, it should be good. Right, it should be good. So now for the rudder, full left, full right, that should be good. So the flight controls are set, checked. So we'll go back and we will set our flaps for takeoff, which is going to be 5 degrees. 5 degrees. Like this. Like that. So 5 degrees. So we have already set the CD reference speeds, the V1 rotate and V2 speeds. So we have already set the trim, the rudder trim should be 0. So I have set to 0. I have set it to 0 over here. So the radio panel, we're not going to use radio. Flight deck door closed and locked. Before taxi checklist, anti-ice checked, outer brake rejected takeoff, flight controls checked, ground book clear. So we will taxi. We will turn on the taxi lights. The runway turn off lights for taxi. So I will now taxi via the way I have showed you. So we will release the parking brake and slowly apply maximum power. Is going to be 35 and 1, 35% and 1. So this is reducing to 35% and 1. So maximum 30 knots on the straights and 8 to 10 knots in turns. And now we may also test the brakes and the steering. So we're going to brake. Okay, so the brakes seem good. So the flight selection instruments, we have already checked them. So once we get to the runway, I will meet you there. Once we get to holding short position, I will meet you there. Okay, so here we are just before the runway. We may now perform the before takeoff checklist. Departure briefing is completed. The departure announcement, which is going to be the cabin chime. We have already done it over here, but the flaps are already set at 5 degrees, and that's pretty much going to be for the before takeoff checklist. So correction, we're going to continue with, then we will require ATC clearance, then we turn on the landing lights, strobe lights, the runway turn off lights, we turn them off. The runway turn off lights would be on. The local lights would be on as required, wing lights is the same, and taxi lights would be off. So now for the takeoff. So we will align onto the runway. Now here, so once we align, here. There we go. So we will set to 40% and 1 to stabilize. Now we will go full throttle. So we'll apply vessel down pressure at around 8200 knots. Then at rotate speed we will rotate smoothly into the air, not just yank it backwards smoothly. And rotate slowly and smoothly. We don't want a tail strike. There we go. We are in the air. So we may go up to flaps 1 degree. So positive rate, gear up, and we will maintain 215 knots. So flaps up, flaps should be up. There we go. So we will now turn, and now we will turn on V speed, and autopilot will be on. So now the LNAV path, the lateral navigation path, we want to stay at that. So we climbed a bit too much over 3000, and we'll turn. There we go. So the plane we want to maintain below 250 knots. Now 250 knots. There we go. So now we are in the air. So the after takeoff checklist to make sure that the landing gear is up, flaps up, and engine anti-ice is out. So we'll make sure that the autopilot may be engaged with over 200 feet. At around 400 takeoff go around mode or toga mode, we'll switch to LNAV/VNAV and flap traction at 20 knots below ground first speed. During the takeoff, we did all of those. So at around 18,000 feet, we will make sure that we will switch to standard mode. The landing gear and flaps are already up. So after auto, in the legs, at cons, we will make sure that we will be at 36. We will try to make sure that we will be at 36,000 feet. So according to our departure, the SID, the standard instrument departure, after this waypoint we may climb to 36,000 feet. So in the meantime, once we wait to reach this waypoint, we can just enjoy the scenery around you as the autopilot is flying the plane. If you want, by auto flight level, we will make sure that we are going to be at 3,000 feet and 3,000 feet, and then the plane will climb to flight level 360 at auto. So I will meet you back once we reach our waypoint Rinaldi. So I'll see you then. Okay, so now we will climb to 36,000 feet at all. So let's set it like this. Increment on 2,000, 36,000 feet. And we will actually change the flight level change for the climb. And I will put it to high thrust to pretty much full throttle for the climb. So we wait until we climb out above approximately 10,000 feet. Okay, so now we have passed 10,000 feet. We will turn off our landing lights. We are actually nearing 20,000 feet. This plane climbs quite fast. We'll turn off our landing lights. Taxi lights were already off. Right, turn off lights off. Wing lights off, and local lights as required but off. So we never had the wing lights on. Local lights we will set them as required, but they were off before. And transition altitude is flight level 180, so we will set it to standard now by pressing the STD over here to set to standard mode. So once we get to cruise, we will turn off the passenger seatbelt signs, and we'll make sure that the altimeters are pretty much set to standard. So we could also increase our climb speeds, increase our speed over here to approximately 310 knots. And once we get to flight level 360, I will see you then. Okay, so now with flight level 360, the max speed is set itself to 0.93. So over here now, the plane is pretty much cruising. We may turn off our seatbelt signs, and the altimeters we have made them check to standard. So if you want, you may use the vertical navigation. The VNav, it will set it. If it starts descending, simply press this. It should hold the cruising altitude. Only if it starts descending. It shouldn't actually start descending, but if it does, just press this. Turn it to VNav, and the plane will now decide its altitude. So I want to talk to you once we reach our top descent point, which is going to be in approximately 4 hours. Let's see our progress page over here. So we should be arriving at San Francisco at 19 Zulu. Right now it is 1953 Zulu, 1954 Zulu, so that is approximately 4 hours. So within 4 to 5 hours we should arrive at San Francisco. So I will meet you once we get to the top of the descent marker, once we start approaching the top of the descent marker, all the way across America. So I'll meet you then. Okay, so as you can see over here, we may see the top of the descent marker rapidly approaching, although we're still quite far out. For example, if we check the progress page over here, top of descent, it's at 17 Zulu, which over here right now we still have approximately 20 minutes to get to 17 Zulu. So but still we are going to plan out our descent. So over here I have the approach. So our approach will actually start over here at this waypoint. So let me do this. There we go. So we'll go to Inyo, where we can hold if AC asks us, and then we're going to go to Diamond, our next waypoint. So we'll continue via here. So as you can see, there is a line below flight level 270, which means we need to be, that's the minimum altitude that we can be at. The absolute minimum. Now over here you see 290k. This stands for 290 knots. And there is a line above it, which means that is the absolute maximum we can be at that waypoint. Now as you can see in Lane, there is flight level 260 and flight level 220 sort of sandwiched between those two lines. That means we can be in between those two flight levels. And as you can see, there's flight level 280 knots sandwiched between the lines. That we have to be at exactly 280 knots. So let us set it, and it counts for all of these as well. So we will set it like it is. So let's go to the legs. Let's go to the legs. It starts at here, flight level 270 minimum. Then at Lane, flight level 260 maximum, flight level 220 minimum. I will try to do it flight level 220 over here. So we need to be at that. We might need to use speed brakes to reach that goal though. So always, there's no restrictions. Lane is at 280 knots. We're going to do flight level 140 or 14,000 feet. Then we will do flight level 100. Then 8,000 minimum at 230 knots, and then 7,000 at Archie, and then we will land. So that is pretty much going to be our arrival. The star, which is the standard arrival, pretty much. So we will set up the approach phase now. So we'll go here, approach, and we will set the flaps. So for today's flight we could land at 25 degrees, but I'd prefer to land at 30 degrees flaps. It does depend actually on the runway, but personally I prefer 30 degrees flaps. Okay, so we will go to the RadNav page over here. So for the ILS on runway 28, I will load up the chart for the localizer for runway 28 over here. So over here we have the localizer is 111.7. So 111.7 for the localizer, and we will be using the San Francisco VOR over here. So let's go back. We'll be using the San Francisco VOR SFO 115.8. 115.8, and the course of the runway over here is going to be 284 over here. So the course is going to be 284 for the runway. We could have another VOR over here. We could have an ADF set in here, but we need to make sure that the ILS is already set. Normally it would be already set, but we need to make sure that it is set beforehand before you do it, because or else it won't do the ILS. So I will drag this off screen, and we'll continue with the checklist. So ignore that will sort itself out automatically. So we will use outbreak 1 for today's landing. It has quite a lot. The approach briefing is performed, and so exactly prior to the top of descent we will just turn on our seatbelt signs, and that's going to be it. We will also want to slow down to 280 knots before our top of descent marker, because you will overshoot if you do not do that. You might overshoot. We're going to be using VNAV. Now, to choose a certain speed, I will show you. You can click over here. We'll go to indicate their speed and go to 280 knots. Like this, the plane will decide what speed we will go at. I will switch to Mac. But if we do like this, we will decide what speed we'll go at. So, like this, we will decide which speed we want it. So So I will just slow down the plane like this. That's going to be the before top descent checklist. Okay, so I'll meet you approximately 10 nautical miles before our top of descent. As you can see, we are approaching it rapidly. As we were talking, we were traveled approximately 50 nautical miles. So I'll see you when we're about 20 nautical miles out. I'll see you then. Okay, so as you can see, we are now approaching the top of the descent marker. It is approximately 10 nautical miles away. So for us to start the descent, once we reach the top of the descent marker, we will go down to 3,000 feet. As you can see, the plane is not doing anything. That's because the plane will go within the constraints that we put in. So it will operate within those constraints. So pretty much the plane will operate within the constraints that we set for it. So it will not pretty much pass any of the constraints. It will try its best to reach those constraints as best as it can. It will simply not skip them unless we tell it to skip them. For example, if I were to press it, it's going to override the altitude setting that the autopilot itself is setting. Now, I do not want it to do this, so I will not do it. But if you want to set a specific speed for the VNAV or a specific altitude for the VNAV, it is up to you. You simply need to press it like that. It's like the heading selector. You select the heading. Okay? So we will start the descent very shortly. So, and we have now started the descent, as you can see, to 3,000 feet. So we will start. So we will now continue descending. So at 18,000 feet, we will set to the local altimeter. So the meter for San Francisco. So the meter for San Francisco says that right now the pressure is 30.12. We're not going to set it right now. 30.12. And we'll set it back to standard in hectopascals. Then we will continue down. So right now, as you can see, the plane is outmaking its own descent. So by our next waypoint, we should be at flight level 270, as that is the minimum. As you can see, I think the Lane in 60 nautical miles, the plane will have a bit of trouble within 5,000 feet, but still, it should not be too much of an issue. Because we will reach, because within 15 nautical miles, 16.5 nautical miles, the plane can descend a minimum of 1,000 feet. I am certain about that. So we may continue over here. Now, as you can see over here, you may see this sort of arc. That is pretty much how the plane's calculation, if we continue at 2,500 feet per minute, how fast we will get to 3,000 feet. As you can see, it is doing quite well. So pretty much all you need to do is monitor it. If the plane will not reach its desired objective, you will use a speed brake over here. Pull it backwards. It makes a significant change because it makes your plane descend much faster. Because over here, the plane is quite aerodynamic. It will create drag on the top of the wings. As I will set it on right now. As you can see, look how much drag it's going to create. Although you can't see it, it is visible once you see the plane descending at that high of a speed, 6,000 feet per minute, by deploying the speed brakes. So, we are going a bit too fast, but no need to worry, because it is now leveling off at level 270 and will lose speed there. So that is pretty much going to be it for now. Once we reach approximately flows or sedes, I will get back. If by any time you are going to overshoot, you will need to deploy the speed brakes. It does quite a huge difference, and I will see you then. Okay, so we are approaching flows, but we have passed flight level 180, which is the transition altitude in America. So I will set our current barometer to the local one at San Francisco over here. So once past 10,000 feet, we will turn on our landing lights. We'll turn on our landing lights over here. Turn off lights and wing lights. The beacon, nav, and strobe lights have been on the entire flight, and that's how they should be. The strobe lights bit much, or strobes that allow other aircraft to see us. Nav lights shows us we have power, and the beacon light shows us our engines are on. And then the logo, lights again, as required. We'd use them during night flights. So I'll meet you once we are passing approximately 10,000 feet. Okay, so here we are at 10,000 feet by sedes. We will go down, so we will turn on landing light, and we turn off lights and our wing lights, and again logo lights if we are doing a night flight. So we'll continue our descent, and then we may turn on our localizer. Once we turn on our localizer, we should be able to see the runway. We still are quite far out though. As you can see, San Francisco is 40 miles out. And we will take a bit of some time to get to the airport. So I'll see you once we pass Archie. I'll see you then. Okay, so as you can see, we have passed Archie, so we will now descend to 3,000 feet. Now, as you can see over here, there is the localizer. Down here, it has intercepted the glide slope. Correction, it has intercepted the localizer. For now, it is still not intercepted the glide slope. Now, I will turn to 240 degrees. So once it captures the localizer, it will automatically follow the localizer. So it will hold its heading actually, and once it intercepts the localizer, it will continue going downwards. Now, I want to go down to 220 degrees, 220 knots, so I can finally do 1 degree of flaps for the maneuvering speed. There we go, we have passed it, and this will add some drag. So 1 degree of flaps. We will want to descend. We want to go down to 200 knots. ATC. Oh, and there's the glide slope. So it will automatically follow the glide slope down to the ground. We will disconnect it around a couple nautical miles. So we will start bringing down our flaps. Flaps 5 is going to go down now. You can see it here says flaps 5. The glide slope. So to go down to intercept the glide. And I want to go down even further, so the plane will just stay at idle thrust while it goes down with the glide slope. It will continue holding its heading until it intercepts the localizer. So, we will simply continue lowering our speed slowly but surely. So 5 degrees, from 5 degrees to 10 degrees, that's what we will do. Okay, so it's going to just slow down. Then now here's the absolute limit, but here are the maneuvering speeds. So we are now descending, we are losing speed. And it will ignore pretty much everything as it is on the glide slope. As you can see, there is the runway over there. So, 15 degrees, is it in the limits? Yes, it is. Now, this is not within the maneuvering speed, but we will still do this just to increase drag. Okay, 17 and 18 degrees are the same, so I will go down to 18 degrees. And over here is the maneuvering speed, and as you can see, the plane is finally slowing down, losing some good speed. Now I will want to go past the 20 degree maneuvering speed. I will keep it there until we do it, until we descend further. So at around at 3,000 feet above ground level, we will set flaps 20. So, or once to capture the glide. Oh, and there is Localizer. Localizer is alive. There we go. So, ignore that, it will automatically connect again. 20 degrees. Here we go. And the plane will simply follow the glide slope down to the ground. So it's capturing the localizer right now. Please ignore this. It should resolve automatically. There we go. So now the plane should land itself. So we will set our landing gear down now. Set it down with my quadrant, my joystick. Here we are. So at around a couple nautical miles before we will, at 1,000 feet above ground, we will turn off pretty much every single autopilot system, and we will continue. So now deploy flaps 30, and we'll go down to 140 knots. And this is the ILS approach. Now, if you are in category 2 or 3 conditions, you would use the ILS. For example, if there's too much fog for you to see the runway clearly, you'd use ILS. But today we have a clear day, no fog, a bit of clouds. We are able to see the runway. So at 5 nautical miles, we will disengage everything, and we shall land the plane manually. So, as you can see, 5 nautical miles. Disconnect this, turn flight directors off, and autopilot off. So, we are now controlling the plane, and now you simply do a landing. Okay, so again you can maintain these, or you can go fully visual. We'll make sure the speed brakes are armed. Out brakes 1, and we are a bit low over here. You will climb a bit, add a bit of thrust, flap set for landing, then slowly we shall land. To lower our rate of descent, there we go, capturing the glide. Minimums, we have passed the minimums, we will land. 100. Bit of a late landing. 30, 20, 10, retard, and land. So, reverse thrust and start braking. With the other brakes, it's an automatic brake. There we go. That is going to be a landing. Stop the reverse thrust at 30 knots, cross the runway, and then we will turn over here. Now we'll go to taxi to a specific gate right over here, as you can see over there. So I will turn on the taxiway, and we will cross runway 28 left. So that is pretty much the flight. So we now turn off our landing lights, turn on our taxi lights, turn off our strobe lights, and now we'll do the after landing checklist after we clear of the runway over here. So this gate over here, I'm going to be taxiing to. Wing lights off and logo lights off. Speed brakes down. Flaps up. So we'll start up the APU to give power. Then we'll turn on the generators. Anti-ice, we may turn it off. And the weather radar was off previously. So we will taxi to the gate. Over here. Like this. Taxi to the gate. And approximately here you'd have a person. You'd have the ground marshaller giving you instructions. That's just worked perfectly. Over here you'd have a ground marshaller giving you instructions. See how it works. That's good. That's good. So parking brake set for the parking and shutdown checklist. So few control switches are going to be off. The APU, we're running on APU power, as you can see. Oop, and continue. As you can see, the buses are off for the aircraft. The parking brake is pulled backwards. The passengers' seatbelt signs are off. I turned them off after we landed. The electric hydraulic pumps, we turned them off, but there's a delta. The IRS selectors are going to be off. The forward door power, we turn it off. the plane will do this automatically. The fuel pumps over here, turn them all off. Only this one's running via AP power. Engine anti-ice, we will set it back to auto. Beacon light off. Flight director, we turn this off during the landing so it wouldn't annoy us over here. And then we'll turn on the external power, so we may now stop using the APU. Now, the shutdown checklists: fuel pumps off, flaps up, parking brake set, fuel switch is cut off, and the weather radar was already off. So, that is going to be it for our flight. We are going to turn off all electrical power by turning off the battery, and now the external power. There we go. The plane is just how it started in today's video, cold and dark. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope to see you another time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to see more of this content. So I'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed this video.